Men need confrontation. Our animalistic impulses are really important, and there's something very attractive about that.
How do you describe the dark masculine to people that maybe are not sure what that is?
It's about accessing the inner killer within you, but also connect that with the heart. The warrior and the lover, and that's an amazing mixture to have. The dark masculine is the force that helps you say to your woman, I will make it to you no matter what. I'm coming for you. 3 things a man can do to bring in the dark masculine would be...
What is true power from your perspective?
True power is feeling really comfortable inside your body. You trust your inner authority. That's power.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers, and today I have with me a man who I've spoken to before, which, I love bringing people back, people I've loved to speak to, people who I follow on Instagram, and I learn from myself and I get wisdom from myself. And this is a man who, like myself, works with men, and he really... What I love about today's guest is he reaches into the very different aspects of what it takes to be a present, grounded, spacious, modern man in a way that is so grounded in ancient principles, but also in the modern world that we live in today. So today's guest is Alex. How are you doing today, Alex?
Mr. David Chambers, how are you, brother? It's a real honor to be invited back onto your amazing podcast. And it's great to see you again, man.
Yeah, man. Good to have you back here today. The first question that kind of pops to mind actually is going to be part of the conversation of today, but I know you talk a lot about this kind of dark masculine energy, dark masculine archetypes. What is it about that drew you to really bring a lot of that kind of energy to the world, right? And showing people a different version of what that is, because when we think of dark masculine, we just think of the bad things, the horrible things in the world. But that's not the frame that you bring. You bring a real kind of mature and positive frame to how that can help a man. So what was the calling for you, what drew you to bring that into the world more?
Yeah, great question. My approach to this archetype is a really holistic approach. And I had to call on it to really save my life in some ways when I was going through some tough times years back. And I met certain people along my path that were kind of embodying this archetype of this kind of fierce, loving warrior energy, ravishing lover energy, but people that had a real zest and zeal for life. And they didn't really see, it's the opposite of victim consciousness. They looked at obstacles as the way, and that really rubbed off on me. And just for anyone listening, I have a very tender, soft heart space. My heart is like mush. It's so sensitive. And I grew up with this deep sensitivity, and I also grew up I think, quite disowned from my power. And so the dark masculine archetype really appealed to me, especially in relationships, especially in the realm of building business and creativity and stamping a place in the world, kind of putting my post in the ground and going, right, this is who I am. The dark masculine is an amazing ally in that arena, I think, especially for men and for women, because it's an eternal archetype. It exists in all beings.
Beautiful. And how do you describe the dark masculine to people that maybe are not sure what that is and what that can bring to them and their lives?
Yeah, it's about accessing the inner killer within you, that primal energy that is very rooted in the animal body. The dark really means density, the density of this earthly realm and the flesh and our lower energy centers and how we project from our core. And our animalistic impulses are really important. We are animals as well as humans, as well as spiritual beings, if you want to use that language. And so it's important to honor our heritage. And there's a lot of teachings out there that convince us to keep floating up and out of the body. And we live in a very cerebral culture that's always forcing us into our minds and into thought and rationale and getting distracted by, technology, phones. We're sitting at laptops all day long. It's really important to get back in the body and trust the body's wisdom.
Yeah. And it's interesting you say that, like, so much of the teachings now is like transcendence. You know, everyone wants to get to like 5D. Everyone wants to run away from this very human experience of being a human, of like having difficult emotions, of, like you said, even the lower chakras, you know, with this, in my experience, when I went through yoga and tantric yoga, my teachers would often remind us, is like the upper chakras are no better than the lower ones, right? They all have their place and they all have their necessity. Why do you think there is that we are kind of obsessed with this upper chakra, this floating out, this leaving the human experience?
Yeah, I think we've had decades of this idea of the new age and love and light, and that, you know, we're trying to be good. Some of it's conditioned through religious programming. Some of it's conditioned through just how to be sweet and agreeable and just get along and get in line. And the truth is, we're actually savages at heart. And that's been whitewashed out of our culture. There's no rites of passage for men. There's no real connection to the wild archetypes inside of us, but they are extremely important. And just like you said, the lower centers, the root, you know, the sacral, the solar plexus, they're power drivers. They allow us to feel connected to the earth, and they give us an immense amount of safety when they're open and expanded. So I think wholesale, there's a kind of sanitizing of our essence as these raw, wild, primal beings. And we're recreating it slowly because we've forgotten a lot of our traditional rituals. It's time to bring those rituals back, whether it's in our day-to-day lives or out there with a tribe in wilderness, or in the bedroom or in the boardroom.
When you say the love and light and this goodness, it kind of made me think of, is this kind of love and light movement, it's almost like nice guy syndrome in disguise, you know, with a new dressing on. It's like, oh, let me just be nice and not let anything bother me. And oh, that person is mean and cruel to me. I just send them compassion and love and move on. Like, I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it doesn't really work, does it? and there's still the bitterness underneath, that we haven't actually stood up for ourselves and held a boundary. Because you can be incredibly loving with a boundary, you know, hand on the heart. No, I'm not standing for this. I won't tolerate that. This is insane. I mean, just look at the way the state is encroaching on our lives. It's because we've lost our power. And I think we need strong men and women in this time to stand up for what's true and what's right. That's the kind of warrior energy. But then standing up for your own needs, like who you are as a person and your place in the world, that comes from a position of empowerment. And it doesn't necessarily come from being agreeable all the time, or not trying to upset the apple cart or offend people. So I think we need to get used to having more edge and more bite, but with heart, you know, always connected to the heart. This archetype, all archetypes in their true form are connected to love.
In their true form, and then in their shadow form, that's where they become disconnected from love.
Totally, yeah. The shadow is ever present, and we've got to watch out for the shadows in the root, the shadows in the sacral, the shadows in the solar plexus, the inner critics, the sense of like, I'm not enough, and always tracking our shame, because we have an immense amount of shame to unpack in this culture. That's what I love helping my clients with, is unpacking the shame in each center so that they can begin to live a more expanded life where they express themselves more and claim their desires more, you know?
What are some of the kind of common shames that men carry, you know, because I think the world looks at men in this way of, I have this idea, I keep saying it to people on podcasts and so forth. We have this kind of general way of looking at men that they're either stupid and lazy, or they're predators. We don't really like to look at men. You know, when we watch TV and we hear the news, men are usually one of those two things, and they can move between there, but they're usually one of those two things. But underneath, you know, from my experience of working with men, there's a lot of shame, right? There's a lot of shame that drives behavior that sometimes doesn't make sense to others. So I'm curious to know, like, in your work with men, and I know, you know, you work across the many different groups of like purpose and life and sexuality and the masculinity, like, what do you see as some of the really common shame spaces that men are dealing with?
Yeah. There's a lot of, I mean, there's a lot of sexual shame in that their desires don't have a place at the table. Then there's a lot of shame around their genitals. Then there's a lot of shame around just who they are as, again, like primal beings, like that they are actually allowed to bring on some of these darker textures. There's shame around the amount of anger that men feel because of the core wounds that they have from them, mother and father. We all have mother and father wounds, but I think a lot of men repress their anger down into the shadow, right? It's like it's just there's no place for it, and it gets relegated down into the depths, and it comes out really awkwardly. And I think a lot of men are carrying shame around growing up in a society that just doesn't honor their true power. It's like our worthiness is only based on how much we can earn or get on the career ladder or provide in terms of monetary means. And I think we're slowly unpacking that as we go.
And when you say shame around true power, what is that true power from your perspective?
Well, true power is feeling really comfortable inside your body, and that your impulses and desires are not just have a place at the table, but are actually beautiful. Even the really weird stuff that, like, if a man has a lot of kink in his erotic blueprint, or his kind of sexual spectrum, that is beautiful. Because I think the world of vanilla dating is mostly bullshit. People are coming to the table with a whole bunch of assumptions. There's no real agreements. There's no real asking for what they want. And it's just people are stumbling around. I think when you get really in touch with who you are and what you want, you have great conversations with people quite quickly, and you set the standard, you set the tone for how you want to lead your own life. So power is about setting the tone for leadership, how you want to lead your own life, how you're taking full ownership and responsibility for your desires, and then going out and creating it with people, finding like-minded people to create amazing, weird, wild, wonderful adventures with. It's kind of agency and autonomy, but also your inner authority. You trust your inner authority. That's power.
Powerful, because, when we think of power as men, we often look at the world around us and, we've all been taught that men have abused their power, right? I see this a lot with men I work with, where they are, they lack self-trust, they lack agency, they lack penetrating the world, doing the things they want to do, because they are just doing their best to avoid anyone thinking that they are the wrong sort of man. They have this kind of the shame that I think you're talking about here, shame around their own power, and they have internalized this external shame. And they're like, oh, I can't be, I can't do anything that would ever upset or hurt anybody. Yeah, I don't ever want to be a man that can upset or hurt anybody. And this is what I kind of call like quite extreme nice guy behavior, because it's not just nice, it's like shrinking as well. They're just like almost removing themselves from the world so that they never impact in any negative way at all.
Yeah, well said. It's a lot. I work with a lot of clients that have the same patterning. It's a shrinking in of oneself, and they really want to feel powerful. They really want to feel that they know that there's something they've lost access to, that there's something they're divorced from, and it often shows up in their lives in them settling for substandard relationships, or settling for the career path that they've chosen, or often fitting into other people's ideas of how they should be. And it's a loss of sovereignty. And it's hard because our culture does program it this way. We've got to get through the schooling system after challenging upbringings where there's an immense amount of attachment wounding and, core wounding, which I know you've been studying very deeply. And then we get into the real world, and we've kind of been fashioned and shaped by the schooling system and told who we're meant to be. So I love working with men and kind of cracking the shell and getting them to a place where they can start being more audacious and bold and taking risks and taking up space, which is terrifying when you haven't been used to doing it.
Yeah. I'm just laughing because it's just like I've seen the same thing with so many men, and I often, because I like plugged into the media and I pay attention to, you know, even the women in my sphere, and there's this like narrative around men just taking up space and being assertive and aggressive and so forth, and I find it really interesting because I know there's men doing that, and I've seen that in my own kind of corporate career. But these men we're talking about here, the guys who do shrink, the guys who don't own power, the guys who are, they're nice, they're kind, they're decent, they have good hearts. Those men almost become invisible inside this narrative. Like, you know, we forget about these men because they don't make any waves. They don't cause any harm. They don't even register on the Richter scale, as I've been saying recently, or women don't even register them in many ways because they don't impact a woman. And I don't necessarily say that negatively, like it's a sort of man who you might work with him. You know, ladies, if you're listening to this, you might work with a guy like this. He's really nice, he's really kind. And you might not have really noticed him. You might have worked with him for 6 months, or you've seen him on the same floor as you for 6 months, but you don't know his name at all. He barely looks at you, you know. It's these sorts of guys that we're talking about here. And that's my experience of them.
Yeah, definitely. And that man could be an absolute savage. He could be a force of nature. The potential is there in every man to bring online like more of his innate power. He can restructure his body. He can start taking bold risks just in little small moments in his life, and getting used to, you know, we've all got to get used to having our ass handed to us in awkward encounters, whether it's going up to a beautiful woman or trying something new and novel for the first time. But I think what's important is we have to kind of challenge death in some ways. I think edge seeking, there's 3 layers to the way I teach this, that there is edge seeking. So men need confrontation. Men need intensity and challenge, whether it's going into the boxing ring or having a wrestle or going on a trek or a hike, or maybe, you know, there's a film called Rush about the Formula F1 driver, James Rush. And in the opening of the film, he says, you know why these men are so enigmatic to women? It's because they're on the edge of death. Every time they get in that car that's going hundreds of miles an hour, they're literally risking death. And there's something very attractive about that. So we've got to stay our edges, men. It keeps us sharp. It keeps us strong. And it keeps us, it reminds us of our power. And then we've got to spend regular time inside the body, getting used to the body, whether it's breath, movement, sound, intention and visualization. And then we've got to do the excavation. We've got to do the shadow work constantly. Shadow work for life, activation for life. And that formula is a really good way of working with this archetype.
I really love what you said there about the edge, you know, that risk taking, that edge, you know, and why it's so attractive. Living in death, but also there's like a kind of hearing in there. You tell me this is what you experience. It's like there's an embracing of that the death could happen, you know, that I'm in this car and I might die, or I'm living at the edge of my life. I'm taking this risk and it could all go completely wrong, you know, whether that's like a sportsman who's really putting himself out there in the world, or it's a celebrity who's really pushing the boundaries of something, an artist who's really pushing the boundaries. They're putting themselves in the position to be killed, both dying themselves, maybe physically, but also the loss of their kind of reputation, that sort of like public death as well. You know, it's like a bravery, it's a courage that kind of shows up. And what often I think a lot of men misconstrue is they see these men and they're like, he has money, he has good looks, and that's why he's magnetic to women. But like, I'm really, as I'm talking about this, I'm feeling this. It's like, actually, it's not the money, it's not the looks, right? And the confidence is something they've developed through being someone who pushes their edge. It's this willingness to like engage, and I guess to use a phrase, and David Dale loves a lot, it's like to penetrate life completely, to like move to the edge of what's possible for them and lean forward, lean into, and even slightly beyond their edge.
Yeah, beautifully put, man. Yeah, David Deida, I think he speaks about this beautifully. And what you mentioned there about some men do tend to look at the superficial aspects of people that are successful and enigmatic, but these people had to take big risks. Whether it's saying stuff on social media or in your social group, or little moments, you can risk the death of your ego by going out to a beautiful woman. You can risk falling out with people by speaking your truth. There's so many ways we can take little risks daily, and then we can take big risks by going off into the wilderness, whether it's for a vision quest for 3 days with no food and just being with nature and hollowing yourself out. Or, I don't know, I had a client recently that his hometown was dead. The dating pool was dead. He was in these regressive loops of hooking up with, partners that just weren't suitable for him. And he wanted to ignite his kind of hero's journey. And we worked together for a few months by building up his testosterone, healthy practices with his genitals and his sexual life force energy, how he could ignite his creativity and get that back up online. And then the big piece was, right, you got to move. You've got to go off and have a world adventure. And he ended up flying off to India, and he's alive again. He's in a community having wild, wonderful adventures, and he's back online. And that feeds into everything else. It feeds into all of our creative projects and the way people see us, because we feel more alive. We have more eros, life force moving through us because we're out there in the world.
Yeah. Oh man, this is, as you're describing it, it's like I feel an aliveness. And also, like, from my own personal experience of, like, two things of personal experience. One is, like, working with men week in, week out, and seeing the men who do kind of struggle in dating, and the way in which they haven't lived lives where taking risks is part of their lives. Right? It's not embedded into the fabric of their lives. The fabric of their lives is embedded is comfort and safety. Right? And there's nothing wrong with safety, but when safety gets too far, it becomes kind of stagnation. And what I'm hearing you work with this guy here is, like, bringing vitality into him, bringing energy into him, vitality, and, looking at himself and giving him the fuel to go off and go into a new environment. Take the risk of that. Flying to India is a completely different culture, a really different world. It takes something in a man to do that. And when you land as a man and you've been the sort of man that does that, the way the world responds to you is just like it's transformed, because it's like, oh, you've done this thing. You've taken this big risk in your life to experience something new. You have to be open enough as a human being, as a man, to, like, do something like that. And that openness with the vitality and the adventure running through your system, like, amazing things happen. Like, mad synchronicities happen. You'll meet amazing people. You'll continue to take risks and have all these beautiful experiences that further kind of ignite the vitality, increase the vitality and the energy and the joy and the fun and the play. Even when there's terrible things happen, you get sick or you get ripped off, you get scammed or whatever it is. But you have so much of this vitality in you already because of the risk taking, the experience of things going well, that you just continue to be a magnet to the experiences that you want to be having more and more of.
Yeah, amen. That's exactly it. Yeah, you become magnetic, and like you said, lots more synchronicities start happening. Life opens up for you in strange ways, and even if you do get your ass handed to, and I mean, I tell you, last year I had some traveling trips that really, I'm not very good with airports. I'm not a good I don't mind planes, but airports I am not good at. I have airport trauma from when I was 2 years old, which is a long story, but it involves David Hasselhoff chatting up my mum in duty free, and we were late for the plane, and I remember my father carrying me underneath his arm at night, and I remember the landing strip lights and the Boeing 747 engine, and it was very traumatic for me as a young man or a young toddler. And so I don't do well at airports, but last year I was doing a long distance relationship, flying a lot, and there was some real hair-raising moments of I'm not going to make the flight, or I'm going to get stuck, or even deported from this country. And it sharpens you up, and it gives you stories to tell. And on the other end is an amazing adventure, usually. So it keeps us alive, keeps us on our toes. And the dark masculine is the force, that fortifying force inside yourself that helps you say to your woman, I will make it to you no matter what. I'm coming. I'm coming. I'm coming for you. It's that desire to claim them and claim them over and over again that just makes women wet, you know. It's very trustable. But it's also an inner fortitude that says, yeah, I'm going to get through this. And the field recognizes that. It's an unfuckwithableness. And I love that about the dark masculine, is it's not about being a cold alpha dog that's trying to brutalize things. It's about a deep inner fortitude and authority.
And what's the difference there? Because I think that kind of cold alpha dog, because that's coming into fashion in many ways, off the back of, like, you know, Andrew Tate and how he speaks about life and women and success. And you could argue that there's definitely a dark masculine aspect to him as a man, right? That's definitely something that's online in him. And I had I'll say the pleasure, because I watched a couple of interviews of him and David Sutcliffe recently, which was a really eye-opening experience. But I guess the question is what's the difference between that kind of guy, that cold, like alpha masculine man, and the kind of man who's got the dark masculine online, that has that energy of claim, has the energy of, you know, not to be fucked with. But there's also an essence of love and care and tenderness in kind of what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. This is what I love helping my clients with is it's kind of like cock and heart coherence. It's being very much connected to the root and the heart at the same time. The heart, people, I don't know if Andrew Tate's changed his tone recently, but people, I think they were getting so offended by him because there was a lack of heart there, and a kind of very linear, one-dimensional view that he has of things that's very extractive, and it just, you know, rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. We can tell when someone is connected to their heart because there's a sense of humility and a sense of care. The behaviors of the heart, I think, are 6 or 7-fold. It's forgiveness, compassion, understanding, empathy, and forgiveness and valor. Valor is like, it's not a quality people talk about a lot, but it's doing the right thing at the right time, stepping in at the right time to intervene if there's conflict or a fight. I think there's a real loss of valor out there. And I know women are feeling that. They feel even more nervous on the streets than they used to. And so I think we have a duty as men to really get in touch with the killer, but also connect that with the heart, whether it's in lovemaking, deep presence and heart-centered kind of awareness of our lover, connected to the root and connected to that primal, like, fuck energy. I mean, you mix the killer and mix the warrior and the lover. I mean, that's an amazing mixture to have. So it's all about coming back to the heart. The heart is crucial to this.
The missing ingredient in so many of these, especially the guys that are talking about masculinity and, like, talking to young boys, I think, about what success is the message. Like, there's this lack of heart. There's a lack of care for others, and to some degree, like a care for self.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a very common phrase in the men's work sphere about coming down out of the head into the heart. It's beautiful. I think there's another layer to that. I think it's about coming down from the head into the heart and coming up from the ground into the cock, and then up into the heart. So grounded and really rooted inside your anatomy as a man and your positive pole, because that's where there's a lot of intelligence, is in your genitals, your penis, your arousal energy. It's very penetrating. It's that testosterone energy. People think testosterone's really brutish. It's actually not. Men that are full of estrogen tend to be more angry and emotional. So it's about strong cock energy connected to the heart and the head, and a man who really knows himself and has taken risks and realized that he can survive on his own. That's what it means to become a man, is that you've flown the nest and you can be self-sufficient in the world. And then the next layer is, okay, how can I provide and protect those around me? That's the evolved masculinity, you know.
There's something you said there around flying the nest, and it's something that's come up a few times in conversation I've had with people around, and I'm wondering if this is the sort of man you've also worked with, is where a man is still holding on to the image of who he needs to be based on what his parents think he should be and his way his parents should act. Like it's, there's still kind of, I don't even think of an analogy. It's like they're still on the leash from their mother. They're still hanging on to their mother's or father's coat strings. And for a man, what I've seen a lot is they're still searching for the validation of their father. Right, still searching, wanting him to validate them in many ways. I guess I wonder if this is something you come across, and like, how does that manifest in a man's life, like more widely?
Yeah, really important point. This is huge. A lot, and it's in a lot of the clients I work with. Is on some level he's still kind of married to mom, the mom energy, and doesn't want to upset the energetic imprint of mom inside him. And also is still under the influence of the father energy, the father that he, even if his father has given him actual physical consent to go and leave the family company and do his own thing, he's still bound by this invisible contract within his psyche, right? So I love to slowly break that down for a man and get him to really embody and visualize and envision a new life away from that. It's like a slow titration. We have to titrate slowly to an edge before we kind of contract back to our original homeostasis. Because jumping off a cliff without any kind of parachute or safety net is often way too terrifying for a lot of us. So I help coach men to slowly break those chains, slowly make the micro movements to like embrace. And it's about embracing a new identity. That takes time to teach or facilitate in a man's psyche.
It's something I see a lot, is like this, like you said, they got to slowly like break away from the rules and regulations of the mom and dad, or the way the dad does certain things, or the expectations of fathers. And look, I've worked with guys who are in their mid-40s and they're doing a job that their parents told them they should do, and they fucking hate it. And their lives are miserable. And some of them even married women who their parents thought they should marry, and they're miserable. And they've lived this life of 30, 40 years, 50 years of their lives, just doing what they thought their parents wanted them to do, and assuming that would make them happy. And they, find themselves in this kind of mid-30s, 40s space where they're actually like miserable with their lives. They hate the life they're living. And they don't know how to really take response. They don't know how to create change because they've always just followed what their parents or mother, father have told them to do.
Yeah. I got to ask you a question. Do you get quite excited when a man like that comes into your care? Because there's a kind of, I know I do, because there's like, right, we're about to crack a shell that's needed to be cracked for a long time. And there's something quite exciting about that. It's like you and me, brother, we're going to go into this together. We're going to cause a bit of a mess, but it's going to be glorious on the other side.
Yes. Yeah. Because you see that there's like, if you've lived your life under your parents' rule, there's also a really beautiful void that is like, who the fuck are you? And who do you want to be? And what's the life you want? And that is like, that's like you says, glorious, because there's so much spaciousness on the other side of that. But he just has to get through the kind of, I see is like disappointing one or both parents. The moment where they feel that real disappointment, like he's just bought, I don't know, man, he just bought a pair of expensive jeans, and he goes home and they're like, what are those things? Like, I bought these for myself. And they're like, God, you've just wasted your money. And he goes, yeah, but it's my money. And he just does that. That's like sovereign move. Instead of being like explaining it away, which he probably did before, he's just going, but this is me. And like the experience, there's a rush that you also hear from him. There's like, I felt so much fear, but when I said it and they just looked at me and they couldn't say anything, they feel like, for want of a better term, they feel like a man, like a real man, adult man who has his choices. So yeah, it's super exciting. about what can be created on the other side.
Yeah, I love those little examples when we stand up for ourselves and we're not editing ourselves anymore for people, And I put my hand up and say there's so many times when I notice myself slipping into the nice guy, because there's a nice guy in all of us. He's there to some degree. Don't want to give him too much breathing room, but I notice when in partnership or in projects where I sort of censor myself, or I try and contract into a little bit more of an acceptable version of myself just to please the other. So just to remind anyone listening that this work is alive in all of us, and we're all working with our little moments of abdicating leadership or settling or bringing on the nice guy to avoid confrontation. He's pernicious, the nice guy. He's very pernicious. He's there, sneaking around.
Trying to be nice. Trying to get what he wants by not saying anything.
Totally. I remember my partner she was crafty. We were going to a party a while back, and there was a certain piece of fashion attire that I'd put on because it was a themed party, and she did not like it. And I caved in the end, subtly. I removed it. And there was that little voice in the background saying, if you go down this path, if you do any more of this, you're fucked. Because you're not standing up for yourself. You're not presenting who you truly are. So it happens in the small micro moments of our lives, And then there's the larger moments when we have to either really embrace and claim someone or end a relationship, You bring in the dark masculine, and that sword energy. It's like, I'm cutting this person or this addiction out of my life with love, but it's time to go. It's time to move on.
Yeah. And it is those small moments. I think the small moments is what most of us experience there, as you say, like the little moments of just going, oh, she doesn't want me to wear it. It'll be easier if I don't. Just be less headache. Or, we can dress it up in spiritual ideas, or maybe it's her oracle speaking to her, and this isn't like the right thing for me to bring it into the world as a man, or whatever it may be, right? Or just, for ease. But it's also us showing our partner that who we are and how, we won't stand up for the things that we want and we like. Yeah. And it's different if it's going to cause her actual distress and pain, but just wearing something that she's not that keen on. There's an example you say there. And I think it's a really good example because it's a moment of dislike, right? We can all live with dislike. But can you, listener I'm talking to here, can you live with the dislike of your partner? Maybe, you buy, I'm going to use a fashion item because I can see loads of them over in the corner. You buy a pair of trainers and she doesn't like them and you just don't wear them, because you don't want her to have to experience that dislike, and you can't deal with the feeling that she's disliking something about you, It's a very powerful kind of example because so many of us would just go, well, I just wouldn't buy them, or I wouldn't do that thing because, she doesn't like it and it's unnecessary. But actually it's what do you want? What do you really want? That dislike is just a dislike. It's not causing her pain. Are you willing to stand up for what you really want and what you really need? And like you said, it's those small moments that happen multiple times a day, even down to, I don't know, man, I've just pulling loads of examples out. We can also often get takeaway on a Friday night, and there's some takeaway negotiation. What do you fancy? I fancy this. I fancy that. And you'd be surprised how often we just get different things. She'd be like, I want this, and I'm like, nah, I don't want that. I'm gonna get this, and she's like, cool, great. Yeah. And she's like, you sure you don't want to get this? I'm like, I'm very sure. But I see that some men will go, oh, I'll just get what she wants, right? To make my life easy. Or even the other way, where a man might try and not negotiate, but almost force her to get what he wants so that he doesn't feel alone, or that he feels like he's in control. There's all these little moments in our lives where we are making choices, and we're either choosing from our kind of sovereign energy, or we're choosing from a place of pleasing another, people pleasing another.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. And these small examples really matter because They show up in the cracks and crevices of our lives, the humdrum of daily life, and it's actually where most of the action is usually happening. We're trying to please and not rock the boat. And even when we're claiming a desire, there's a big difference between a man who is horny and wants sex, but is kind of sheepishly asking for it. Should we? She's at she's washing the dishes or she's packing things in the kitchen, and he's like kind of like half-heartedly kind of creeping in there with a desire, and it's just not embodied, and it kind of comes across to her as a little bit creepy or even just irritating, as opposed to walking into the kitchen and just waiting for her to catch your eyes and just saying, crawl over to me, come here, and just kind of a firm hand on the back of the neck, whispering something in the ear, and then walking away, just eliciting that seductive atmosphere that you're fully in touch with your desire and you want her, and you're being very clear and bold about the way you do it. It's all in the small details, I think, this stuff.
Yeah, the tiny detail, because to an onlooker, to a man who is unskilled, and he's watching that, for instance, he sees a video of this on TV, he may see like, oh, the guy kind of dominates. He's aggressive with her, he grabs her firmly. He'll see all those things, but misses the kind of nuanced detail of the tenderness, the care, the awareness of coming into the room and observing her and waiting for the eye and what is transmitted through the eyes, the tone of voice he uses to give the command. Like, all these things can be missed by the untrained eye, or by someone who's not wanting to see that, right? Who wants to see that there's something negative, something toxic happening in those moments. They don't see that there is a love and a beauty and a connection and a understanding and like an attunement to each other.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, the attunement piece is such an important part of this embodied connection and seduction. I had one client I was working with, and we were working on his transition from work mode in the studio to reconnecting with his partner once she had got home. And I was like, okay, when you're getting off your laptop, get into your body, you're going to spend minimum 5 minutes doing like some deep breathing, like an ego eradicator, some Kundalini yoga, getting out of that calcified energy in the head and opening up the body. And then when you walk into that room, walk in slowly, deep in your breath, and just take in her beauty, like breathe her in, even if she's not looking at you. And when you actually walk up to her and lay your hand on her for the first time, make it really considered, like the way you're actually placing your hand on her and the tone of your voice and the depth of your breath, and lean in with your desire to connect. And just tell me if you notice something different to you walking in from like work mode up in the head, unconsciously kind of like trying to connect. And the results were staggering. Simple moments that just become infused with a bit more life and embodiment.
Yeah, so simple, right? Such a simple piece that we're just not shown, not educated on, and like the importance of these subtle pieces, these subtle movements, these subtle elements of the day to day that we just don't tune into. We look at the big, obvious, the gross elements, and we don't see that there's the subtlety of life. And I think men in particular are kind of, we're maybe not guilty of this, but like untrained in this subtlety, this subtle vibrations, the subtle breath, the subtle movements, the subtle energies of life, relationship. We're just not kind of trained in that. We're so looking at the obvious that we kind of miss this.
Yeah, it's very true. Details matter and attunement matter. And this is what it means to be like a sensitive savage. If I love teaching men about certain aspects of kink and shibari and rope tying, how to drop their partners into subspace, because it's such a relaxing, beautiful place to be for, especially the feminine, but for any being. And it's in the moments when he's learning how to drop her into the rope, like he's slowly pulling the rope around her body, and he's using firm body contact, and he's slowing down his breath, and he's making every little moment count, and it's considered. And he notices like, wow, this is like I'm dropping her into a trance, and I'm dropping myself into a trance. And you can really rush these things and miss all the fine detail, or you can turn it into a beautiful piece of art. And I think that's great training for men, is to become slower, more considered lovers, taking in the details, slow penetration, breathing together. Because we've all been indoctrinated by scenes in pornography that just involve lots of unconscious pounding away, and we've got to resensitize our nervous systems and become more attuned to our partner's nervous system.
Amen. Amen. I speak to so many men who are like encased in this rushing. It's like, whether it's sexually, whether it's life, feeling like there's so much to do, there's so little time. Nothing is taken with consideration, with slowness. And in that rush, there's like a disconnection from others, a disconnection from ourselves.
Yeah. I mean, I notice it in my own life when I'm rushing. I know you know this deeply because of the work you've been doing, is we're involved in this kind of consciousness sharpening practice. So I notice it when I'm clumsily eating my food like a slob. And I'm like, Alex, slow the fuck down. Like, breathe, chew, take your time. When I'm in traffic and I'm just suddenly getting too preoccupied with like looping thoughts and trying to get to a destination, that's when accidents happen. So deep masculine practice is about consciousness sharpening and slowing down and grounding, because we fly off so quickly.
You mentioned sexual shame earlier, and I wanted to dive a bit deeper into that. You said, one of the shames that men have are about their genitals, around their desires. Like, I'd love to hear you unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, we are taught that our genitals are bad. And often we were caught masturbating to porn at an early age and probably shamed for it and told off. So then it has to be done in private, in secrecy. And generally the programming that we receive is that down there is bad, right? And a lot of men just don't spend enough time with their genitals, like massaging their balls, getting in touch with their prostate, learning how to work the pelvic floor to create traction and energy down there. And we just, same with women. We've got these developed unconscious habits of self-pleasure and the way we reveal ourselves to our lovers. And so it's about unpacking that slowly and developing consistent self-pleasure practices and re-infusing a sense of deep love into the way we treat our genitals.
I feel like women are really on this journey of self-pleasure. I had so many, feminine embodiment, so many feminine sexuality coaches out there, women really gravitating towards this, doing rituals of self-pleasure and so forth. But I often feel like men are struggling to even kind of get close to that sort of level.
Yeah.
And what do you think kind of holds men back from kind of stepping into a more positive sexuality or positive relationship with their own sexuality?
What holds men back from a positive relationship with their sexual? Well, there's a lot of competition out there. Every man is dealing with the primary masculine wounds of either abandonment or inadequacy. And I think many men are terrified of being perceived or rejected because of their sexuality, right? I remember with one of the retreat companies I work with as part of the men's work, there was a day near the end of the retreat where we did a big workshop on sex, and it involved all of the men in a protected room that was walled off in a dark room, but derobing with each other slowly, carefully, and sitting in small pods naked together and just telling their stories, having 2 to 3 minute shares and telling their stories of their relationship with their genitals and what the kind of shame they felt was. And it eventually ended us all in one big circle. But the beauty of this is that we got to expose ourselves to each other with love and care, full acceptance, and tell our story. And every man had a different story that every man could relate to. We internalize so much of the shame down there from stuff that's coming at us from the world. So, because it's our positive pole, it's where a lot of our intelligence is. So it tends to travel down there. So I think we need to unpack that together as men, and then to be individually as men in healthy practice together. So I really encourage my clients to develop really healthy self-pleasure practices, to extend their window of tolerance with when they ejaculate, and to ritualize it so that it's a beautiful act of self-love, as opposed to unconsciously done with your trousers around your ankles to some pixels on a laptop screen. Which we've all done.
Which we've all done, and probably will do again in our lives as well.
Yeah, probably.
But I love what you said there about the retreat, taking our clothes off, because for a lot of men, that's a really uncomfortable piece to like be naked in front of other men. It's really interesting. I speak to many women in this work, like in retreats they run, there's always often sections where the women take their clothes off, and the women sound like, from what I'm told, they're quite like looking forward to it, comfortable with it with one another. Obviously, there's always some level of discomfort, but when you ask a group of men to kind of take their clothes off, like there is a palpable terror that they're experiencing, like this palpable fear and terror that they experience, being naked in front of one another.
Yeah, 100%. It's abject terror, because we're revealing ourselves, and we have such deep sensitivity in our testicles. Like, we've all been kicked in the balls. Holy guacamole, does that hurt? And our balls are on the outside, so like we're very vulnerable in that place, and so revealing ourselves involves, it's going straight to the deepest shadow of men, which is to be shamed for who you are, for what you have, told you're not enough, or told that it's repulsive, or like it's just not beautiful, or that's hard thing to deal with. And a lot of us as men have been programmed with that by our parents, by early lovers, by culture at large, of just, it's the child that was told to stop crying. That's disgusting. It's the child that was told, put that away. That's you dirty child. It all gets infused in the body. So we have to, we've got to unpack that stuff slowly.
And then we kind of go through childhood and adolescence and sport, and there's the kind of banter and the ridiculing and embarrassment that happens with men. The number of, I played cricket for a lot of years, and the way that guys would talk to each other about each other's bodies, you'd be like, wow, like this is quite weird and cruel. And then we carry that into like adulthood, and if we have to be naked in front of a man, I imagine a lot of the fear that comes up is like, oh my God, he's going to do what all these other boys have done, or I'm not going to compare to this other guy. And it's just like this rush of fear and anxiety about what's going to happen in this space, even when you tell them like, hey, we're just going to do this, we're going to talk, you guys know each other, we kind of operate with love here. But as the terror that we described is like all this residual stuff that's occurred to them kind of over the years.
Absolutely. And yeah, bullying, being shamed in school. I forgot how brutal school actually is. It's been a while. Locker rooms and changing rooms. Jesus, it's brutal. And this is why we need the dark masculine rituals, like to be out in a field, but around a fire with other men, screaming and howling and like naked underneath the moonlight. That shit is healing. It's important to have these moments where you get in touch with your wild man, and to be accepted for who you are in the tribe. Really, really important. And to also for men to experience a lot of de-shaming and love from their feminine counterparts. I work with a lot of women, and I encourage the women to be trained in cock worship. To worship a man's cock is one of the deepest gifts you can give to him, if you love and respect him, right? Or for these men to go and spend time with a tantrika who can do some body work with him and give him a soft cock massage, or just adore upon his body. So he's receiving this feminine transmission of love and adoration, which every man needs. It's often the missing piece of rites of initiation that isn't talked about. In the past, in highly evolved cultures, men would be taken out into the wilderness by the elders of the masculine tribe, right, of the men. And then after that, they would be then taken to the temple to spend time with the temple priestesses, the wise women that were carrying these frequencies and codes of erotic mastery. And they would spend time with the men, and the men would get a deep training and transmission from the women as well. I mean, you want to have a healthy society? Those are the two things that young men need.
Yeah. These good men to take the men out and show them a way, and also then women to show them another way, but also show them their own kind of power, for the men to experience this like transmission of power from men as men, and from the women as women, to kind of build that kind of respect for themselves and respect for others as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Respect for themselves, respect for the other tribe members, and respect for others. That's character building stuff.
And the self-pleasure practice, because I'm such a fan of this as a way to like rewrite our habitual habit around sex and self-pleasure. Because it's not even just self-pleasure, it's sex as well, the way this is one of my sayings. It's like the way we have sex, the way we masturbate is the way we have sex. So if we're used to just like masturbating quickly with no lead up, with just like gonna whack on the porn or whack into my fantasy, get hard, masturbate quickly, 2-3 minutes later, done, and then go off on the rest of my way. Like we're gonna bring that same. It's like I just see it as this, and I have no scientific evidence for this, other than the experience I've had with working with men. Is like you kind of program your body to this. When pleasure starts to be felt, this is how we run with it. This is the script. And then those men bring that same kind of energy into their masturbation that they bring into sex, and kind of wonder why they're not having the sex they want, or they're not, the sex isn't as enjoyable for them or their partners they want. So I see this, the self-pleasure as this way to kind of shift our script around sex, but also, and I'd love to hear your take on this, of like reconnecting with another practice to kind of reconnect to our body and its sensations and our arousal.
Yeah, I love that point you just made about how we self-pleasure is a pattern that we repeat in every area of our lives, especially when we're actually in the bedroom. So we all have a mind-body memory, and if our patterns are of quick release and quick spurts of arousal and just wanting to scratch that itch and release it, that's a lack of containment. And I teach all the men that I work with, like, your ability to hold your life force energy and your arousal is the same as your ability to hold the energy of the feminine coming at you from all walks of life, from your partner, from everything that's happening around you. So if you can get better at spending time with your arousal and spending time with your erection in loving contact, and learning different types of touch and stroke and being with your body, you're going to treat your lover's body in the same way. You're going to learn how to slow down in the act of lovemaking, and you're going to be more attentive. It all starts with the self-pleasure practice. If we can't build a beautiful connection to our own genitals, how are we going to have a beautiful connection to someone else's genitals? So it's just not going to happen. And really teaching men the art of slow penetration, like entering into a woman with deep presence slowly and just holding yourself there without moving or going into thrusting too soon. Just see what happens. That is the deepest moment of presence between two people. And I love it when a man comes back to me and he's like, yeah, you know what? Wow, I felt all these subtle waves moving through her and through me. I felt her relaxing in a way I've never felt before. I felt that I didn't have to start rushing into pumping, because I've always thought that that's what a man should do. So it's like we're rewriting the script and the mind-body memory and like you said, to deeper attunement and presence.
Yeah. And just remembering the first time I read about slow penetrations in a book, I've got Tantric Sex for Men, I think, with Diane Richardson, I think it is. And it talks about soft penetration as well. And I remember reading this and I was like, wow, yeah, I guess this is something to do. And then trying it myself and being like, Like, holy shit, like you can just slow down. You can just like do this. You can like penetrate a woman over the course of like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and really just take your time instead of like, you know, what most men are kind of in this rush, this anxiety of like, I want to have sex, I need to make it happen, because they're like, it's almost like you said, they can't hold the arousal. It's like uncomfortable in their body. They've never learned to both have arousal and ground it in calm. Like, you know, have those two things together. Like, oh, I feel aroused, but I can be calm. I can stay relaxed. So it's like being able to practice doing that is this, you know, part of our kind of general, I think, like stress response of like, oh, I can feel stress and be calm and be focused and be attentive. But like the slow penetration is like a game changer for you. If you're a man who listens to this, it's something you really have to try. It's just like being really slow, being really deliberate, looking your partner in the eye deeply, you know, feeling them, and not almost like you've got nowhere you need to go, you need to get to, you know, it's moving this kind of goal of getting in and getting out. I think that so many of us unconsciously carry into sex.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I love the phrase you just said there, grounding it into calm, feeling all the arousal and being with it and grounding it into calm. It's so relaxing to our partners. It's so relaxing for ourselves. And you can really bring in the dark masculine textures from that place. You know, the way you're penetrating with your eyes, the way you're firmly gripping their body with the intention to devour them, but to devour them slowly, piece by piece. I mean, that's just, I know so many women that are aching for that experience from their partners. And for any man listening, like this activation of the dark masculine is a real gift for the women, because they have often only encountered the unhealthy version of it. And to encounter the healthy version of it is such a breath of fresh air. Because I know they're starving from it. I just hear from women all the time, like, we're hungry for this energy. Where is it? So I've got some work to do.
Yeah. And I guess to finish up on that, if you were to give kind of men 3 tips they could kind of take away and start actioning today about bringing more of that kind of dark masculine energy into them, whether that's sexually, whether that's in their personal power in their life, what kind of 3 things would you speak to?
3 things a man can do to bring in the dark masculine would be, again, this theme of edge seeking. So for him to journal or write down, what is he avoiding that he's afraid of, large or small? And number 2, to make the body strong, to like get fit. And I mean like genital health as well. Like, yeah, go and do some weights, but have a mind-body practice like Qigong or some Kundalini yoga, and get your genitals strong so that you're spending more time and self-pleasure with your genitals. Because that's really the essence of your power as a man. So the risk-taking piece, the genital and body strength. And then the third piece would be, I'd say, would be to spend time with other men that have activated this archetype. It will inspire you. It will rub off on you. You'll be like, oh my, that's the energy I want. This guy's got it. And because men have to practice together. It's where we grow that intensity and challenge that we love doing together is the rocket fuel for growth. So find men to practice with. Or come and see me.
I love those. Yeah, I love those. And on that, like after listening to all this, I'm sure the listeners are wondering how they can come and see you. You know, what have you got coming up? If you've got any programs in the works, one-to-one, any group things?
Yes, thank you for asking. As luck would have it, I do have a program out on June the 24th called Savage Heart, and it's a 4-week group online program based around activating the dark masculine. So I would highly recommend any man who's curious to come and check that out. And then just find me on Instagram, Alex_Mishka, or my website, www.alexmishka. I'm always out there taking on one-to-one clients, usually for 3 to 4 months. And then apart from the group programs, I do workshops and retreats globally, here on the island of Ibiza and sometimes in the UK and around Europe.
Fantastic. Fantastic. I mean, I highly recommend you check out Alex's Instagram. There's a lot to be learnt there. It goes in even deeper into the various aspects of the dark masculine we've talked about today.
Yeah.
So thank you, listeners. Thank you for your time today. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. If there's someone in your life you feel that would really benefit from this conversation, maybe there's a partner you can sit down with actually listening to this, that's a really powerful way to create change in a relationship, is sitting down and listening to podcasts and pausing when there's bits that are maybe you want to talk about deeply or get their opinion on. I think it's a wonderful way to learn together. Or maybe there's just a friend of yours that you can see who doesn't take risks and he needs to start to step more into this dark masculine energy in his life and bring more magnetism into his being. Please do share it with him, because, that's how we change the world. Yeah? That's how we make more better men, to put really simply. But enough from me. I'll just leave it to say thank you to Alex, and ciao, ciao to you listeners.